Assalamu alaikum and a warm welcome to The Bigger Picture. Today's topic for discussion is the role of small businesses in our community.
Social, finance, employment, transport, welfare, education, careers, health, politics, world peace, disability. This is The Bigger Picture.
Do local small businesses have a role to play in our daily lives? Take your average small local shop. It may be where you buy your things for your home and your family, but it may also be a meeting place where you can catch up on local news. What kind of small business is in the heart of your local community? How important is it to you? Small businesses also offer employment opportunities, and as the saying goes, a great oak tree grew from a simple acorn. Do you know of a small business that started in a modest way and now is a thriving business employing many local people and playing a real part in our local affairs? What kind of small businesses are at the heart of your local community? Perhaps you work for a small business, one that plays a part in what goes on in your community. Maybe it sponsors a local playground or a community centre. Have you ever thought about starting your own business? Well, we sent out our intrepid team to find out your opinion with regards to small businesses and what you feel how their work benefits the local community.
I just see a small business as sort of a family-run sort of thing with they're not making huge amounts of money. They're it's a local thing where they know local people. It's not just one of the faces just like trying to spread themselves around the country. They're focused in their local community and and being part of it. That's what I see as a small business.
I think a small business is perhaps a turnover of $1 million or less and 10 to 20 employees. That's probably not the official definition, but I think it's a pretty good one.
The smallest business I can think of, if you want to set up, would be a business that you sell things online, because you've got no overheads or shops. So you would start up a store, say on eBay, selling things on a regular basis. That would be a small business.
The security behind starting your own business just isn't safe enough. I've got family to look after, I've got responsibilities, and I just need a regular paycheck coming in. Whereas you start your own business, if it goes to pieces, it's all down on you, and then your family suffer for it. So I just can't take that sort of risk.
I was a sole trader. My wife helped me, but I was a sole trader. I'm a chartered accountant by profession, and I did that. I also ran a substantial home improvement company, or I had shares in it. That had turnover about £3 million and employed about 80 people. So it was a small, medium business. That was a long time ago.
When you run your own business, small or big, you've got the freedom of planning when and where you operate. You're not confined to 9 to 5 hours. However, there is the responsibility and the worry of your own business. Whereas if you're working for someone on a wage, you know your money's guaranteed at the end of the week or the end of the month. When you run your own business, you haven't got that guarantee, so there's more pressure.
Frankly, I prefer to buy locally, and I also prefer to buy in smaller shops. I think it goes more to the community that way. The employment is definitely here, and the proprietor is here. He spends money locally, and it revolves. So yes, we do prefer to buy locally.
Today on the programme we have the following guests in the studio. We have John Davey. He's an award-winning social media director. Jonathan Davey has been working in social media, email marketing and telemarketing and generating business leads for many years. And he runs the blog I Love Windsor. We also have Stephen Fry, the CEO of the Hounslow Chamber of Commerce since September 2011. And he's also served as a board member for the West London business area. And also later on in the show, we'll be meeting with Jonathan Blaine. He's our professional career advisor who'll be giving us advice on how to find a job and if you're looking for a job. And also something that I'm looking forward to is our resident cartoonist, and he has been published. And as our programme unfolds, we'll be using his magic pen to spotlight something that he has found interesting or has fired his imagination. And now, here's a chance to see what else is coming on in the show.
We would like to hear your views and thoughts on this topic. Tweet us at The Bigger Pic using the hashtag MTA_TBP, or send us an email on thebiggerpicture@mta.tv. Our social media team is excited to read your responses to our discussions. We will also be sharing your tweets, answering some of your questions. But here's a question for you. If you get it right, you can win a prize. Tell us, what is Yahoo an acronym for? A. You are here officially organized. B. Yet another hierarchical, officious oracle. Or C. Yet another helpful operation origin. Please send in the answer via Twitter or email.
Well, get tweeting and send in your answers to the question, and let's see who can win the mug. Well, let's start with our first question with Stephen Fry. Stephen, tell me a little bit about the Hounslow Chamber of Commerce.
Hanif, we're a Chamber of Commerce representing 18,000 businesses across the lozenge, which is Hounslow, which begins at the Hammersmith Steps and runs all the way out west to Heathrow. 18,000 businesses, 93% of those are SMEs, small and medium-sized businesses. Of that 16,000, we're probably looking around about 9,000 to 10,000 of those are actually family businesses, family-run businesses employing local people living and employed in the local community.
Yeah, also, so what actually do you do? What's the actual function of the Chamber of Commerce?
Well, we'll do a number of things. I mean, my most important role, I think, is to make politicians' lives a misery. Which I do with great glee and great joy. But seriously, we're a lobby business, and so we look after the interests of those 18,000 businesses. If there are problems, if they're encountering problems, if they feel that there is law or conflict with authority which is unjust and unfair, then we'll evaluate, and yeah, if the chances are, if they're right, we'll lobby on their behalf, both locally in the local council, regionally with the GLA, or nationally at central government.
And obviously you also help and support local businesses as well, don't you, in various networking events?
Absolutely. We run something like 7 networking events a month right across the borough, and it's a huge borough, nearly 1/3 people living in Hounslow with those 18,000 businesses. And primarily we look to try and integrate those businesses so they work together. They form a real hard core of how to do business together. So we're looking for B2B opportunities.
Brilliant. And John, besides all the sort of entrepreneurship and businesses that you've run, you've also been the chairman of the FSB, and the FSB is the Federation of Small Businesses. Could you shed some light on that, and how does that differ from the Hounslow Chamber of Commerce?
Yeah, just to qualify, that was the East Berkshire Federation, yeah. So a branch of. Yeah. They're very similar organisations, aren't they, really? It's all a matter of how they come together. East Berkshire had about 1,000 members, and we focused around running events for local businesses, taking up mantles when they were required. So, if somebody had a problem and they couldn't resolve it through, normal means, then we might get on the bandwagon and help them drive that forward, get a bit of publicity, because that's what it's about. It's about bringing that community together and supporting people through.
And do you have any examples?
We had a campaign a couple of years ago, which was a national campaign, and it was about keep trade local. And that was fascinating because it was about saying to people, look, do you want Tesco's and the like to be taking over the planet, or would you like local businesses to thrive more? There's a statistic that the economic multiplier effect, that's it, that's come to mind. Now this is all about the fact that £1 spent locally goes to 6 or 7 other businesses in that vicinity. So the butcher pays the candlestick maker, pays the plumber, pays the milkman, pays whatever. And if that £1 can benefit 7 organisations, if they're small organisations. If they're big organisations that are taking the money out and putting it offshore somewhere, that £1 goes to that company, then it goes to an invisible bank account somewhere, and it disappears out of the system. That's no good.
And Steve, you've had similar experiences with the local 18,000 businesses that you represent as well?
Yes, indeed. I mean, the idea of localisation of business, we would tend to call it the local economic community, whereby we encourage businesses to work together, to trade together. But it's also having access to the large procuring organisations, like the local authority, like Heathrow Airport, where we try and smooth the path and make access to their huge economic buying power even bigger and better and more opportunistic. So they get a slice of the 1.8 billion that Heathrow procures every year, and also a slice of the, I think it's 1.14 million that Hounslow Council procure every year. That money we would like to see spent locally, particularly in Hounslow.
And we've seen the benefits of that, as John, that you've described. But John, tell me about something else that you run. You run a blog, I Love Windsor, and also that's related to your social media director and all of the social media do. Can you tell me a little bit about how that came about and why you run it and what benefits it gives as well?
Okay, well, it came about really because I started something called Business in Berkshire 12 years ago now. And that started out as an email newsletter going to local businesses who, at that time, there was nobody else publishing such a communication. That was 2002. Nobody else was doing email marketing communications in the same way. So people would sign up, information would go out. Then as that grew and changed and morphed, etc., I realised that I live in Windsor and I love Windsor. It's a fantastic place, but it needs things challenging every now and again. Coming back to this, getting behind and champion something. The local council in Windsor is made up of 53 Conservative MPs and 3 independents. Well, what can happen there? They're always going to dominate whatever they want, and they show it time and time again that whole greed factor kicks in and they just make the decisions up on the fly and roll it through the system. So somebody's got to be there to challenge it, and that's what I tend to do with it now.
And you're holding the flag for the independents.
I stood as an independent in the last election. I got 293 votes.
Oh, well done! Congratulations. So, Steve, you also run a blog for the Chamber of Commerce because it is a very useful tool, isn't it, for local small businesses?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, our front page on the website is our blog where we publish news daily. That news can be essentially information giving. And if we find a story, a good story, which is talking about local business, local economic factors, things that will have an impact on our business, yes, we'll run that on the front page of the blog, as a news blog. But we also hit 5 times a week a database of something like 13,000 businesses. And that email marketing is information giving. We're primarily designed to give information to businesses so they can make decisions in the market from an informed position.
Oh, fantastic. So just to remind our viewers, during the programme and also yesterday as well, about 9 o'clock, we've been running a poll to just get a feel for what our viewers would like to know. So one of the things that we've been running as a poll, we asked a question: how best does your local business support your community? And we gave them 3 options. And option number 1 was employment. The other one was sponsor your local charity or community and encourage the community pride. So what we encourage our viewers to do, get onto Twitter, please follow us and answer the question, and we will reveal the results of that poll. So please, viewers, definitely get involved, send in your tweets, and then we'll reveal the results later. So just coming back to a little bit what you talked about earlier, 18,000 businesses in a small area, and I imagine that grows and significantly. There are, it's the backbone of our economy here in the UK and in many of the other countries around the world. How would you define a small business?
Well, classically a small business, an SME, classically a small business will be turning over less than, I think it's about 50 million euros now, and employing less than 250 people. But that's been recently looked at, and we're looking at micro businesses as well, which are between 1 and 5, 1 and 10 employees. And if we're looking at businesses in Hounslow and West London, I think most of the familial businesses we're looking at there, 9,000, 10,000 of those will definitely be employing less than 10 people, and be operating at that micro to small size.
Okay, so before we get onto our press highlights, John, I know you're quite passionate about this, and Stephen's explained quite clearly what a small business is.
Yeah.
But why should we buy locally? I mean, what's the driver? You've touched on it before.
We've got to look at our kids. What do we want our kids to be doing? Do we want our children to be working locally, or do we want them living in Manchester or in Scotland? Where do you want them to be? If we don't employ locally, they're going to have to go where the jobs are. They're going to have to move out. And we don't want that, do we? We want to have a community, and the community is made up of the people and that evolving. And so you've got to create opportunities for them.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people talk about small businesses as being your local shop, where you come and you buy your paper in the morning and you buy your sandwiches for the day out and you talk to people. But actually, I mean, that is at the heart of the community, and the post offices are essential for local communities. But there is this other style of small businesses, aren't they? Because you turn a corner, you might have a small manufacturing, or you might have another business that's an insurance company down your local high street. But the local high street, again, has so many small businesses on there, and that's heart of the community as well.
It is, but a lot of the house street has been taken up by the big organisations. You know, the landlords of those properties, living in Windsor, a lot of the properties are owned by the big pension companies and big organisations, and they don't want to take the risk on small organisations. They want to know that rent's going to be paid for the next 10 years. Yeah. So they'll only give it to big organisations who can stump up and maintain that property. Therefore, you don't have the smaller businesses in the towns. Obviously, you have them on the lesser high streets, if you like, but they can't get a foothold in there.
Well,
it's too expensive.
there is something I wanted to ask you, but we won't ask. Well, I'm going to ask you, but you can answer it later.
Yeah.
And it was to both of you: is how would you decide if a business actually it can be successful, and what are the pitfalls and what advice can you give? But just before we do that, we've got our press highlights as well, and you guys have chosen some magazines and articles. This is what the sort of international news is writing about, and we've chosen 6 articles from various papers, and we'll ask you to just choose one of them each, and we'll discuss it later on in the show. So the ones that we chose was we've got number 1 from Small Business, and it's the recovering UK market for small business finances. Then we had the Telegraph, Australia is hottest exports for market for small businesses in 2016. How interesting is that? And another article for small businesses, Britain's happier when self-employed. I know I'm quite happy being self-employed. And International Business Times, interest rates rise, bigger threat to small businesses than Chinese uncertainty. And then we got The Guardian, the UK economic growth reaches 0.5%, and there's a slowdown fears persist. And then we got The Guardian, starting a new business and how to avoid the failures. And then one thing I'm quite interested in is BBC News talks about the small firms seek crowdfunding. So hopefully what I'll do, we'll talk to John. We'll go to John, and we'll talk to John a little bit more about some career advice. Some questions come in, and then I'll come back, and then we'll discuss one of the articles that you've chosen. Okay. Again, John, thank you very much. It's so good that you're here with us today, as usual. And I mean, you've got an interesting background yourself, and I mean, not only are you a career advisor. You've written books on entrepreneurships, and you've been an entrepreneur yourself. You've been an author as well, and you've run so many local businesses. So one of the things that I wanted to ask you, what would you give advice? Is it better to start your own business, or would you advise working for somebody? What's the balance if somebody's thinking about something like that?
Well, I think with everything, Hanif, there's always pros and cons of different things. When the program started, we had the VT, and there was one guy saying, I just want my regular paycheck at the end of the month. The benefit of being employed is that you should get a regular paycheck. You should know what you're in for. But I think that you've basically got a choice. You've got 4 choices, actually, in terms of how you earn a living. You can be employed, you can be self-employed, you can be a business owner, or you can be an investor. And if you're employed or self-employed, by and large, you're swapping your time for money, and how much you earn is finite. There are a few exceptions to that. If you're in sales, sometimes you can have commission. If you're a business owner, you can build something of inherent value and other people can work and earn you money. And likewise, if you're an investor, you can invest in things. And if you're lucky, your investment will rise and you can be sitting on the beach earning your money that way. So everything's got a plus and minus. But I think that what used to be the case is people said, I want security and therefore I want a job. But I think job security is reducing and reducing and reducing. And even if you work for a big organization, even if you work for the public sector, you used to think that you worked for the civil service and you'd have a job for life. You'd work for the military, and they're just making people redundant, you know, at short notice. So in many ways, well, while some people would argue that having a job is security, actually being self-employed or having your own business can be more security because you're in charge of your own future.
So should you think, it used to be quite exciting having your own business, and people, I'm a business owner, but actually it's now becoming more of a necessity then?
Well, I think that the world is changing, and I envisage a future where all of us will, whether we're sort of in employment or working for ourselves, will start thinking about ourselves as a businessman. If we're an employee, you know, our employer is our customer, and we need to sell ourselves to the customer. I mean, I think a lot of people realise that they go, oh, I don't want to sales, because if you're in business, you have to sell things. But actually, if you're getting a job, you've got to sell yourself. So we're all having to sell, you know, and we're all having to provide service. And so whether you're employed or self-employed, actually, I think that there's a blurring and that the two are almost merging. And really, you need to, even if you're employed, I think, see yourself as an income-generating machine, and always be prepared for maybe moving, you know, companies if you have to.
I mean, John, you've also been associated with a local business as well, and I think you helped your wife set up a Montessori school, which is now in its 25th year. And I'm sure there's been so many challenges because, again, it's in the heart of a local community. So, what are the sort of pitfalls and what advice could you give? Or what, in fact, what have you learnt in the 25 years of running that small business?
Well, first of all, I have to take my hat off to my wife. I think she was like a lot of people, that she was employed working in somebody else's nursery school. She had a dream from a very early age that one day she'd have her own nursery school. And what she did was, at the time, they ran an enterprise investment scheme whereby when you set up a business, the government would give you a relatively small amount of money to set up the business, and they'd provide you some support. And you had to put together a business plan, and there were other people. And when you set up a business, people throw the statistics at you. And actually, a lot of business, well, most businesses fail after a sort of relatively short period of time. But she was driven by passion, and I think that that's really important. And also, this idea of a local business, if you're a nursery school, you are serving a local community. Therefore, you know the people, they know you, and you care an awful lot about your reputation. And I think that because she had this dream to offer the very best in nursery education, she wanted to be the best of the best of the best. And it just drove her. There was that passion and energy and enthusiasm. And, 25 years later, she's still here. And I think there are not that many businessmen that are. And of course, there were lots of lessons learned along the way.
Yeah. And you said to me earlier in the past that more and more local businesses are under threat. And what did you mean by that?
Well, I think there's an onslaught for local businesses because what you've got is the internet coming in, and this internet suddenly removes all barriers. You know, and consumers, and we're all consumers, we're driven by price, and you know, we want the biggest bang for our buck. So on the one hand, we'll say, yes, we want a local service, and we'll quite happily walk into a local shop and see what it is that we want. But a lot of people will go on, see what they want, go onto the internet and buy from the cheapest source. And I think with delivery companies, you can have next day delivery. Even Amazon are doing same day delivery. It's like a massive threat. And the threat is not just coming from other companies in the UK, it's coming from worldwide. Suddenly we're accessing, through eBay, and Amazon, all these different channels. People from all over the world are selling. So I just think local businesses are under threat. And of course, the big players are moving into the market. They're moving into the high street. They're taking the best properties. And so it's very difficult in some industries for local businesses.
And just to wrap up very quickly, what advice have you got for someone considering starting their own business? I know you talked about passion. But is there something else?
Well, I think what we've got to think about is, what is our life really about? And often when people talk about a business, they talk about making money. But my suggestion to the viewers is, don't do it just for the money. Focus in your life on what's going to make you happy, what's going to make you fulfilled, how you can make a difference to other people, and then have a secondary to that, how you can meet your financial needs, and desires, and also how you can achieve the career success you want. Because you don't have to have an aspiration to be a big local business. You can just be a one-man band.
And I'd love to talk to you some more, because I know you brought some book. I mean, you've helped written a book by Gary Dustin. You can hold that up, but that was a man who started from nothing and is now multimillionaire and done some amazing
school
stuff.
at 16, no qualifications. He's worth something like 130 million, and he did it all himself. So if you're thinking to yourself, well, I haven't got any qualifications and I didn't come from the right home, there's always hope, because it's the desire inside you.
Well, there you go. Well, thank you very much, John, and thanks for that advice. It's fantastic. So, as we mentioned earlier in the show, we said we have our resident cartoonist, and as the programme unfolds, he'll be bringing something to us through his imagination. So can we have a look at what Masood has done? Masood, how are you getting on with your drawing?
There you go.
Let's have a look. Can we see it on the screen? Yeah. Okay, very quickly, just explain that to us. What is it that you're trying to do there?
Resonating on what you said earlier on about how a business is pretty much like an oak tree. If you nurture it right, it can be daunting at first when you look at other big companies. But if you nurture it right, if you look after it, if you invest in it right, put your energy into it and your passion, then it can succeed just like everyone else's.
Yeah, well, fantastic. We'll come to you near the end, and hopefully you'll be able to show us a finished article on the paper. Well, just remember, we'd like to hear your views and your thoughts on the topic that we'll be discussing. Please remember to tweet us at The Bigger Picture using the hashtag MTA_TBP, and obviously send us your emails on thebiggerpicture@mta.tv. Our social media team is here, excited to read your responses to our discussion, and we'll also be sharing your tweets and answering some of your questions. So we'll be giving away a prize to one of our lucky viewers in response to our multiple choice questions. So please keep watching, and let's see what the answer is to the question we'll be asking. Thank you very much. Well, so let's continue on with our discussion. And I left you with a question, didn't I, John? Just tell me, if you were to a business, what are the sort of telltale signs of it being successful or not?
Well, I think Jonathan's right. Passion is the key. And he just reminded me, holding up that book, about my cousin. My cousin left school at 15, 16. He was dyslexic, so he couldn't read and write. Okay, he ended up in the paving business. And I had 50 guys working for him in the Norfolk area. Got it up to a successful level, if you like, in money terms, but then his relationships fell over, blah, blah, blah. So he re-engineered himself and decided that what he would be most happy with...
John, just with what you're most happy with, I'm going to have to just pause you there for 1 second. We've got our guest on the line as well, and she has come out of a meeting for us to be able to join us today. We have our MP, Seema Malhotra. She's the Shadow Chief Secretary to the Treasury. Hi, Seema. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Hi, great to join you.
No, I really appreciate it. I know you're actually in Parliament now, and you've just come out of a meeting to join us live at this programme. So I'll get to the question straight away, and I'm not sure how much you've been able to hear our conversation as I interrupted John's story he was telling us. We've been talking about the role of small businesses in the community and the benefits that they can bring, and understanding your political interest. Can you share some insight into this matter that we're discussing?
I think this is a really important topic because we often underestimate the insight we can get from small businesses if we look at them differently. All too often we see them as local businesses that we just see as part of local trade. But I grew up in a small business in Hounslow, and for me, I think it was very formative in understanding and being part of a local public service. I do believe, and I've seen this as a member of Parliament as well, that small businesses are much more in the local community than just their own entity. They are really the eyes and ears of the local area, and you can pick up a lot through your relationships with small businesses as a politician. I think it's often underestimated, actually, how much we can understand and learn both for national policy but also local community improvement. And I think it's absolutely vital we find ways of strengthening our relationship with small businesses who work incredibly hard and incredibly long hours.
Yeah, exactly right. And raising a family that run a small local business, I mean, the hours that we put in, even myself, and I'm sure John and Steve here today who have joined us in the programme, definitely put in the hours. I mean, it's not a standard 9-to-5 job running your own business. It sometimes can be 18 hours in a day, many days in a week, and there's no break to it. And also, we did discuss about, all too often, there is a situation where women are very much underrepresented at business events and in business as well. How do we achieve more women-friendly networking so they can be more involved?
I think you've hit another really important point, and I'm delighted you've also got the Hounslow Chamber of Commerce on the show today, because we've worked together on some women entrepreneurs events. The key to it, I believe, is finding different ways in which you can bring women together. I used to hear a lot when I was certainly researching this and still am a couple of years ago. Women would be saying, the networking meetings are exactly the time that I'm picking up the kids from school, or it's when we're having dinner. And so thinking about different times, different channels that you can network using more online tools as well, I think that holds the key to bringing women together and be more connected to areas of support. There's a lot of research that shows that women-led businesses are less likely to live as long, if you like, in terms of business life, but also they grow less fast compared to male-led businesses. So in terms of thinking about both a win in terms of equality, it's also important for us to think about what win can come from the perspective of economic development if we think about different ways, more innovative ways that we can engage women.
Yeah. And can I just interject there 1 second? Please stay on the line. I just want to ask, Steve, in terms of your networking, you hold networking events in the afternoon as well, so they can be included?
Yes, we do. I mean, one of the things we've done specifically, actually, is a breakfast meeting. And we do it at such a time so that parents, female parents, have got, women have got the opportunity to take their children to school and then come back to the meeting. Lunchtimes are often difficult. But it's actually arranging networking events which fit the right timetables of people in the community.
Well, that's great, and that follows on from what Seema Malhotra MP was saying. And just to finish off, I've got two quick questions for you. So I'll ask one very quickly, and it's a very hard question to answer quickly. So what advice would you give to women starting their business in terms of work-life balance?
I would just say go for it. You've just got to find a way in which you'll make it work for you. And it is challenging, balancing challenges at home. And in some ways, that's where the internet is helpful, because you can do a lot more at different, more friendly hours for you that don't interfere with your family life. It's challenging, but I would say that many women have shown they've been able to work out a balance for themselves, and taking advantage of the growing women entrepreneur networks over the internet as well is a big part of trying to work out how you can make it work for you.
Well, thank you very much for that. And I said I had one more question. We're asking everybody this question who comes on the show because it is a hot potato at the moment. What are your views on Europe, staying in Europe? Are you promoting to stay in Europe, or are you promoting to leave Europe?
I believe very strongly that we need to stay in Europe, not just from the point of view of our economic potential. We know already that businesses will be less likely to invest in Britain if they don't see that easy access to the single market. But also, we should be incredibly proud. We're part of a network of 28 nations. That is the best peace process ever. We've only come out of the 2 wars in the last century. It's only been 70 years. And if we want to keep peace, we need to invest in political structures too. Europe's not perfect, but I believe that we're absolutely right to stay in Europe and fight for change from the inside.
Well, okay, thank you very much, Seema, for joining us today. And I hope you will join us again and maybe join us in the studio. Okay.
Absolutely, I'd be delighted.
Oh, thank you very much. And thank you again for all your comments and very valid information and a very important part of the show. Thank you very much. Talk to you again soon. Thank you. So, John, I interrupted your conversation, and thank you for allowing me to do that. You're telling us a story. Just finish off there at that point.
Well, my cousin Gary, so he couldn't read and write at school. He went off and set his own business up. He basically bought a wood saw and went chopping trees down to start with. Got into paving, built up a successful business. His domestic life fell apart a bit. He wasn't happy about that. He was employing 50 guys at one point, and the business was flying in financially, but that wasn't giving him the work-life balance that he needed. He went off to the Himalayas and spent a month walking around the mountains to come to peace with things. Came back and decided, right, if he had 10 or 12 people working for him, that gave him the perfect amount of revenue against responsibility, and then he could spend the bulk of his time working out and getting fit. He goes swimming in the lakes in the freezing cold. He's mad. Well, but he's got it. He's got his perfect work-life balance now.
Oh, fantastic. So I did ask you to discuss look at one of the articles that we chose earlier. So, Steve, which one did you choose?
I went for the story on Britain's happier when self-employed.
That's from Smaller Businesses, is
Smaller Business magazine, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Fascinating article. Apparently 4.62 million individuals are self-employed in the UK today. That is quite a lot. It's still less than, what, 1%? Yeah. 10% of the amount of people in the UK. But there's also a subsidiary which says a quarter of Britons want to be entrepreneurs. I remember going to Reading once for a seminar given by a professor, and he said that you're born an entrepreneur. You can't make them, that you're born an entrepreneur. So I'm not quite sure where that fits. You also asked about whether it was a necessity that we should be self-employed. You asked that. Yeah. I think there actually is becoming a more needy, desiring people to fulfill this creative urge to do something more than just sit and be a bottom on a chair and a clock watcher. That somebody actually that they want to create something. There is an energy in people, and we find that in our communities. There's an energy to do something. Hounslow has nearly 14% of all jobs in the borough are in the creative sector. That says something about the borough, but it also, more importantly, says something about the communities that exist in the borough. All that creativity.
Yeah, and Hounslow itself is very diverse.
Incredibly diverse borough.
Yeah.
I mean, for the foothills of Hammersmith and Chiswick in the east to sitting around Heathrow Airport, enormous variance in the social demographic. But that's important because we are a cosmopolitan borough, which means there is so much to look to, so much to do, and so much opportunity. You asked about what things should you do as a small businessman. Well, I think one of the things you need to do is to have a really, really strong brand, something really strong. Yeah. We've talked about the energy and the vibrancy, but I think a really strong brand. Okay. And the other thing which I think is important is reputation. And that reputation is not just as a successful, fair, honest business person, but as someone that's responsible and community focused.
Oh, fantastic. So I've just been told that the poll is finished and they're collating the results, and we'll be able to bring that to you in a short while. So John, tell me, what article did you go with?
The one on crowdfunding.
And it's something that we've not actually discussed yet, is that right? And it's another interesting...
Well, it was an area a couple of years ago Crowdfunding popped up, let's say, 4 years ago, and a couple of years ago, I decided I wanted to get involved in it. So I found an organisation that was promoting their own platform and took that to the marketplace in the Berkshire area. In fact, the Magna Carta flotilla, I got Heathrow Airport, we mentioned Heathrow, to sponsor the flotilla through their platform. Yeah, which was
and that was through the crowdfunding?
Through the crowdfunding platform. And the lessons learned from that, I mean, this BBC story talks a lot about music and all the rest of it. Well, music is a good example, because if you build your fan base through traditional mechanics, you've then got a fan base to call on. A lot of people approach crowdfunding and think, oh, I've got this great idea. They write a piece of A4, they stick it on a crowdfunding platform with a hope that people are going to invest. Well, there's no connection. You've not made the bond with people. Why are they going to invest in you? So you've got to create that connection, haven't you? And that comes from doing a whole host of things. You know, if it's not music, if you've got a more functional thing, then you need to go out and meet the community and have a strategy for your crowdfunding that's probably a 6-month campaign before you even start.
Exactly. And that's similar to making a documentary about a subject you're passionate about. Yeah. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to reveal the results to the poll. And I believe we have those results that I can show you. So the results that happened, so we've got there on the screen. So the results of the poll was 70% for employment. And for a local business, the question we had asked is, how best does your local business support your community? And then the number 2 was sponsor your charity community event. And the last one was encourage your community pride. So employment, and this is what we've been talking about today. That's right, isn't it?
Well, employment's, I mean, you can't take it away from the thing. But when we were talking before, you say about people who are happy in an employed position. You know, there's
no, that's fine. So what we're going to do now, just before we reveal who won the question, we're going to see how Masood is getting on. So what we're going to do, Masood, do you want to just show us what you've now been able to complete during this programme?
It's not fully completed to exactly how I want it, but it's getting there.
That is quite impressive. It's gone, So okay, fantastic. So that's continuing with what you were saying. That's about the oak tree.
Essentially, exactly.
Yeah, fantastic. Okay, so we'll reveal that picture at the end in more detail. So I'll give you a few more minutes while we wrap up. Yeah. So basically, to the question that we asked, who could win this mug? Have I got the right one? Yes, the bigger picture mug. So we have, from the algorithm, so can we reveal what the question was? It was, what does Yahoo an acronym for? And everybody knows what Yahoo is. It's a search engine and an internet portal. So the answer that we had was B. Would you have got that? I don't know. So yet another hierarchical official oracle. Right, so how many people got that correct then? Right, okay, so from the algorithm and what they've managed to work out, you need to choose a number, one of you, a number between 1 and 14. So
30.
Yeah, 30.
It's a good one.
It's the lucky number, isn't it?
Right, okay. So number 13. So it's Talha Ahmed. So I'm just not hearing properly. You've got the bigger picture mug. That's coming over to you. Congratulations. So at some point that we'll bring that to you. Well, thank you very much. So in conclusion, just before we sort of wrap up, so basically what we're going to do for our next programme that we'll be talking about is about how we can prevent our young people or other people to be radicalised or maybe potentially become terrorists. So that's a programme we're putting together about prevent. So please do send us or get involved with all of that. So anyway, just like to say thank you very much for getting involved, and thank you to our guests for taking part today. And again, thank you for all our viewers, and I hope to see you again soon. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum.